Here's something I see all the time. A business spends 3 months building an automation, new tools, new integrations, the works. And within 6 weeks, someone's back doing the same job manually. Not because the automation broke, because they automated the wrong thing. And this isn't a fringe problem. Research from the Everest Group puts it at somewhere between 30 and 50% of repetitive process automation initiatives either stalling or underperforming. And the most common reason is picking the wrong process to automate in the first place. So today, I want to give you the exact system I use before I automate anything. It's not glamorous, there's no AI magic here. It is an audit, a way of looking at processes and answering 2 questions. Should this be automated? And how should it be planned? Because if you get this wrong, automation doesn't save you time, it just helps you fail faster. Here's what we'll cover. First, I'll walk you through a real example so you can see what this looks like in practice. Then, I'll give you the framework. 5 filters I use to score any process as an automation candidate. And finally, once you've found your candidate, I'll show you how to plan the automation like a product manager, using process mapping that actually works. Let me paint you a picture. This is a pattern I see constantly. A business, let's say it's a services company, maybe 40 or 50 people. They've got a process for onboarding new clients, and it looks something like this. A sales rep closes a deal. They fill in a spreadsheet with the client details, then they send the email to the ops team, and the ops team takes that spreadsheet and re-enters half of it into the project management tool. Then they send a welcome email, which they copy paste from a template, changing the name and the start date manually. And then someone in finance creates an invoice in the accounting software, again, re-entering the client name, the service, the amount. This is the same data. It's been entered 4 times across 3 systems. And now, look, none of these systems are complicated. Each one takes maybe 5-10 minutes, but here's where the math matters. Let's say this company onboards 8 new clients a month. And across re-entry, the emails, the manual template work, let's call it 30 minutes per client conservatively. That's 4 hours a month. Now, that doesn't sound too catastrophic, right? But stretch that out, 4 hours a month, 48 hours a year, that's 6 full working days, just on copying and pasting data that already exists somewhere else, and that is just for 8 clients. And that's before you count the errors, the wrong email going to the wrong client, the invoice with last month's pricing because someone forgot to update the template, the ops team chasing sales for information that was already in the spreadsheet. Now, here's the important bit. A lot of people would look at this and say, right, let's just automate the whole thing, and they'd start shopping for tools immediately. But that's exactly where it goes wrong. Because if you look closely at that flow, some of those steps probably shouldn't exist at all. Maybe the spreadsheet is redundant, the CRM already has that data. Maybe the welcome email template hasn't been updated in 2 years. Maybe the finance team is creating invoices manually because nobody set up the integration that already exists in their accounting software. Automation doesn't fix a broken process. It just runs a broken process faster and at scale. So before you automate anything, you need to audit the process first. Strip out what's unnecessary, standardize what's left, and then decide what to automate. That's what this framework is for. Right, so here's the framework I use. I call it the 5 filters. 5 questions I run any process through before I'd even consider automating it. If the process passes all 5, it's a strong candidate. If it fails 2 or more, it's probably not worth touching just yet. Question 1, is it repetitive? Now, this sounds really obvious, but you'd be surprised how often people try to automate something that happens maybe 3 times a month. If a task isn't happening frequently, and by frequently, I mean at least weekly, ideally daily, the return just isn't there. The sweet spot, in my experience, is processes that happen dozens or hundreds of times a month. Think data entry, status updates, report generation, invoice creation. Things that follow the same pattern every time. If it's a one-off, or it varies wildly every time, that's not an automation candidate, that's a project. Filter 2, is it rules-based? This is the big one, and it's where most people get tripped up. A process is rules-based when you can describe the decision logic as if this, then that. If the invoice is under £5,000, auto-approve. If the lead score is above 80, route to senior sales. If the form is missing a required field, flag and hold. The moment a process requires someone to think, to weigh context, read between the lines, make a judgment call, then you're in human territory. Now, that doesn't mean you can't automate around it, but the judgment step itself stays with a person. And this is really important to acknowledge. Some processes look rules-based on the surface, but have edge cases that would be dangerous to automate without a human check. Think about expense approvals, client communications, or anything with compliance implications. In those cases, the smart move isn't full automation. It's automation with a human approval step for anything outside normal parameters. If in doubt, automate the routine, escalate the exception. Filter 3. Is the input digital and structured? Automation needs clean fuel. If your process starts with structured input, form submission, a CRM record, a row in a spreadsheet, you're in good shape. But if it starts with someone reading a PDF or interpreting a voicemail or deciphering a handwritten note, then you've got data problems that need solving before you even think about automation. Now, in 2025 and 2026, AI has made this line a little blurrier. Tools like document parsers and LLMs can extract data from messy inputs much better than they used to. But, and this is a big but, that extraction layer adds complexity, cost, and a margin of error. So if you can fix the input first, say replace the emailed PDF with a form, you'll get more reliable automation for less effort. Filter 4. Is the volume high enough to justify the build? Now, this is the filter that kills most good ideas, because even if a process is repetitive, rules-based, and has clean inputs, if it only saves someone 10 minutes a week, the maths might not work. So here's how I think about it. Estimate the time saved per instance, multiply by frequency, and annualize it. If you're not saving at least a few hours a month of reducing meaningful error, the automation probably isn't worth the build and the maintenance cost. Because automation isn't free. It takes time to build, it takes time to test, and time and money to maintain. If the process only saves 15 minutes a week, but takes 20 hours to build and needs updating every quarter, then you're underwater. You haven't actually made any savings. In my experience, the automations that deliver the best return aren't the clever ones. They are, sadly, the boring ones. The high volume, brain dead, simple ones that nobody wants to do manually. And if you want to actually run those numbers for your own processes, I built a free ROI calculator on my website, aiaio.me. If you punch in the process details, how often it runs, how long it takes, what you're paying the person doing it, and it'll show you exactly how much time and money that process is costing you per year. It's a quick way to see whether the volume justifies the build, which is really what this filter is all about. And finally, filter 5, is the process stable? The last filter, and this one catches a lot of people off guard. If the process changes every 2 weeks, new rules, new exceptions, new tools, new stakeholders, then it's a terrible automation candidate because every change means rebuilding or adjusting the automation, which eats into your return. The best candidates are processes that have been running the same way for months, ideally longer. They're proven, predictable, and boring is exactly what you want when you're automating. So, repetitive, rules-based, digital inputs, high enough volume, and stable. If a process clears all 5, you've got a serious automation candidate. If it fails 2 or more, either fix the underlying issues first or move on to a better target. And if you're looking at multiple candidates, which you often will be, prioritize by impact. Ask, how bad is this problem today? How urgent is it? And will it get worse if we wait? The answers to those 3 questions usually make the priority obvious. Right, so you found your candidate. The process has passed the 5 filters. Now what? This is where most people jump straight into a tool. They open Make or Zapier or N8N or whatever platform they're using and start building. And I get it, it's exciting. But this is also where scope creep, broken integrations, and 3-month quick projects are born. What I'd encourage you to do first is something that product managers and process engineers have been doing for decades. Map the process properly before you build anything. So step 1, define the boundaries. Before you draw a single flowchart, you need to define the edges of what you're automating. Now, I use something called a SIPOC for this. It's a one-page framework that forces you to answer 5 questions. Suppliers. Who or what provides the data that kicks this process off? In our onboarding example, that's the sales rep and the CRM. Inputs. What's the actual data? Client name, service type, contract value, start date. Process. What are the 4 or 5 high-level steps? Don't go granular just yet, just the big blocks. Outputs. What does this process produce? A project setup, a welcome email, an invoice. And finally, customers. Who receives those outputs? The client, the ops team, the finance team. The reason this matters is scope. Without clear boundaries, automations expand. Someone says, while we're at it, can we also automate the follow-up sequence? And suddenly your 2-week project is a 2-month project. The SIPOC isn't exciting, but it is the thing that stops a focused automation from turning into an open-ended IT project. Step 2, map the flow, human versus machine. Once you've got the boundaries, now you map what happens inside them. And the key here, and this is something I think a lot of people miss, is to clearly separate what a human does from what the automation does. In process mapping, this is sometimes called a swim lane diagram. You've got 2 lanes, human and machine, and every step sits in one or the other. Where the process crosses from one lane to the other, that's a handoff, and handoffs are where things break. So you want to be very deliberate about where you put these crossings. Ideally, the automation handles the repetitive rules-based steps, the data transfer, the template generation, the status updates, and the human handles the exceptions, the approvals, the quality checks, and at every decision point in the flow, you need to ask, what happens when this goes wrong? What if the data is missing? What if the value is outside of a normal range? What if the API is down? These are your gateways. They're where you design the guardrails. Route to human review, send an alert, hold and retry. Whatever it is, it needs to be explicit in the plan, not something you figure out after the automation is live. Step 3, design for the exception, not just the rule. Here's something that in my experience separates automations that last from automations that break within a month. On the happy path, the process working exactly as designed is easy to automate. Any tool can handle the straight line. What kills automations is the exception, the invoice that's in a different currency, or the client who sends their details in a reply email instead of the form. The approval that sits in someone's inbox for 3 days. You know what I mean? So when you're planning, spend at least as much time on the what ifs as on the what shoulds. Map the exceptions. Decide how each one is handled. Build in timeouts, fallbacks, and escalation paths. This is also where the newer AI capabilities are genuinely useful. In traditional automation, the if this, then that kind of flow, you had to predict every exception in advance. With AI agents that can reason through ambiguity, you can handle some edge cases dynamically. But, and I want to be clear about this, that doesn't mean you skip the planning. It means you plan where you'll use that flexibility and what the boundaries are. AI agents don't remove the need for planning. They change what you plan for. So let's pull this together. Before you automate anything, audit first. Run the process through the 5 filters. Is it repetitive, rules-based, digitally structured, high enough volume, and stable? If it passes, then map it. Define the boundaries with the CPOC. Separate human work from machine work and design for the exceptions, not just the happy path. If you do this, you will avoid the single most common reason automated projects fail, which is automating the wrong thing or automating a broken thing faster. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, I can see 3 or 4 processes that might pass these filters, but I'm not sure how to scope the build, that is exactly the kind of work we do at AIAIO. We run these audits, we plan the automations, and we build them. So if you want someone to look at your specific setup, there's a link below. But honestly, even if you just take the 5 filters and run them yourself this week, you'll be ahead of most businesses I talk to, because most people skip this step entirely. Don't automate garbage, audit first.